Michelle, thank you again for being here. And you are a woman of many facets. There are many things about you that are amazing that I have enjoyed as your friend. You are an artist and art teacher, a traveler of the world, an incredible athlete who I've had a great time with on many occasions. But today we're just going to really talk about you as an artist, and your process and sort of how you got to where you are and what interests you, and then obviously talk about the pieces that are in the show. So I would just like to start the conversation by asking you to give us some background about you and how you became an artist.
Well, I think like all artists, we sort of played as we grew up, and then I was more of a businesswoman in my early adult life, and then I moved to Borneo with my first husband, and that I couldn't work. I didn't have a kind of visa where I could work, and so I was forced to paint, and I had all this free time. So I started painting and, really studying the masters like Degas and Michelangelo. I was really into figures and portrait work, from the get-go. And so I just started studying, replicating those works, because I didn't actually go to college for art. I went to college as a graphic designer, and I was a graphic designer in Vancouver for a bit, but and then I fast forward 8 years, and I had my first solo show in Manila, Philippines, and the honorable Canadian ambassador, I forget his first name, but his last name was Colette, and he opened the show, and it almost sold out, and then bombs started going off, not that night, but that year in Manila, a lot of bombs, and some near the house. So I ended up coming back to Canada, and I started a little bit more art then, and then I moved up to Whistler and got involved with the Whistler Arts Council, and they've got a very vibrant art community, and so I studied more and painted more, did a lot of work for a lot of cover designs for Peak News magazine, and that really, all artists, they need to share their work to complete their creative process, and it's very encouraging and validating when it goes into print, and so that was, I really love doing those. They're a little bit hairball, because you literally have 4 days to come up with the concept and finish the painting and submit, based on the main editorial piece of the publication that week. But I like deadlines, and they make me get things done quickly. So otherwise, I just sort of like I discovered with when I painted George Floyd. May I share my screen?
Mm-hmm.
So what interesting happening here, hang on, is that I ended up, he took about an hour to sketch and about 2 hours to paint. And it was sort of interesting for me, because I really wanted to get it in I wanted it finished that day, because, my week was tight for time, and I just wanted it to be done. And I also I devoted the day to, doing this. And I found that I paint better when I have little time. So this is what I learned that this week in painting this, and it's now on display at 301 Gallery. And I was hoping to get it to the family, but I think there's probably thousands of pieces of art being asked to be donated to the family, and all I could find was GoFundMe pages for money. And anyways, I'll keep trying, but for the time being, it's on display at 301 Gallery. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Oh, don't keep it up for a minute, because I have a question about it. So your style is very loose and immediate, which obviously is a reflection in this particular case of you doing this work quickly in response to the times, and obviously wanting to make a statement and a contribution to what's going on in our country right now. But this can represent one of your styles. You have a couple different styles, but this is certainly one that you use a lot in portraiture. This sort of loose, big brushwork and bringing color into the face, and that's not probably wouldn't be there in a photograph, but that's something you see, you know, the blue in the cheeks and the chin and the forehead. Was this a style, did you sort of always start with an immediate style like this, where it was just really getting paint on the canvas and sort of seeing what happens, or sort of how, was there an evolution process for you?
Well, it did start with those Peak news magazine covers where there was definitely a lot of artists like that inspired me, but I was a realism artist. And it's really hard to go from being a realism classically designed artist to doing sort of like loose, almost like pop art style painting. And you just, like what I tell my students, just breathe and be willing to make happy mistakes, and just know you can put paint over top of it if you don't like it. And so that's why I prefer acrylics over watercolors. And watercolors was the first medium that I did my show in and did work in. But I really prefer the punch of acrylics. And in fact, what's on the background, I actually filmed the sketching of this and the painting of it, because I wanted to make it into a tutorial about drawing and painting the portrait. And in the background, no, I mean, it shows up on the tutorial, but it's actually the beginning of a painting of elephants that I never finished. I didn't finish it. And so you'll see that there's like that little, like sort of a plum stripe behind his jaw, under his ear, that bright orange in the bottom right-hand corner. That's all from the original painting that I left. So there's something, this is also something I tell my students, it's never a waste of time to like start a painting and then you just like, ugh, you don't know how to finish it, or you don't want to finish it, put it aside. And yeah, literally a couple years later, it came in perfect. And it helped me set the color palette of how I tackled this painting. So I'm trying to get looser. I'm trying to, and I also learn a lot teaching, because there's a lot that artists do that's quite an unconscious process. And I had to like learn how to communicate it to my students. And then I began to understand my method. And then that helped me figure out other artists that I really like to understand their way. And so I hope that I'm able to inform, I think I have, you know, my students at Wildwood Academy and Art Circle here, how to be more expressive with their brush strokes, because I'm a big fan of a poem rather than a novel. You know, fewer brush strokes can say more than a million brush strokes. In my,
I would say you definitely achieved that in this painting. It's very powerful and in the moment, and it really translates well. Well done. Hey, can you get out of shared screen, because I'd like to bring up another piece of yours just to talk about. Let's see if I can do that. Okay, do you see that?
My website,
yes, and I wanted to go to your I wanted to go to your animal series, if I can.
It'll be under wildlife.
Wildlife, that's what I got to do. Okay, so I'm going to Wild Thing.
Wild Thing. There we go.
And I just like to talk about your storytelling a little bit, and because a lot of your storytelling is, I don't know if I can make that bigger. Oops. Well, there's that one. Let's look at that one since it's bigger.
Sure. Yeah, it's the same series.
There's a lot going on here in your storytelling, and just thought that this is a very different style as well. So can you talk about this piece and what your influences are here?
Well, urban art has been a big influence in my work, and something just a little bit edgier. There's a lot of artists that inspire me.
Who are they?
Well, I love Banksy. I love Sam Flores. He used to be more of a street artist. Now he's become more of a fine artist. But you'll see in the background there's maps. So that's sort of like a transfer onto the canvas, and then I put, rubbed on stains. So basically, I think that, yeah, this is urban circus in flight. So I'm talking about the city as being an urban circus. And I'm not saying that nicely. And so you'll see here that zebras are escaping the circus, which is basically how I feel about zoos in general, that they should not be held captive. But that being said, there are also zoos that are doing amazing things to prevent extinction of certain species. So the zoo world for animals has changed, and for many animals it's actually preferable and they are safer than being out on the savannah. But this I don't know why I call it urban circus in flight. Oh, that's a nice airplane. I threw that in there. And then the swings. And then actually, these are navigation maps for pilots in the background. So that's just another layer of flight, like fleeing the city in flight. So I guess that's what I'm doing there. It was a few years ago.
Yeah, and can you talk a little bit about how you use your spirituality and metaphor kind of in your work?
Oh.
Like,
Well, what I do know
for
is that,
example, this one,
well,
you're clearly this
same
woman.
thing.
Yeah,
Same thing. Like this person, it's hard for the
Oop,
viewers to see, I'm quite sure.
yeah.
But basically, what she's sort of sprinkling pixie dust on the elephants to flee the confines of the circus. And I guess I used to live in cities. Like I lived in Manila, Philippines. I lived in Beijing, China. Um, you know, I learned when I was there, but I think when we are in these life experiences where we are challenged by what we see, third world poverty, there's a lot we saw, and I won't go into it, but a lot of heartbreaking stuff in China and the Philippines. But it just, like I said in a post recently, it is all, like, to this day made me very grateful just for, like, simple pleasures like running water and constant electricity. um, and then my practice is what just keeps me from freaking out in this era that we're going through right now. I mean, I do have my moments where I get real sad for the planet and everybody, but my practice definitely is my glue. And
Well, that's a perfect segue into the current exhibit, I think, which I'm sorry I'm moving around so much.
perfect.
Those of you who are watching, I apologize. So I'm just going to, I don't know if you, here's one right here, but I'm going to go to your page on our website just to pull up a couple pieces for you to talk about. So the idea around the essential ebb and flow exhibit is sort of the theme is water and how water plays in our lives. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about
Oh yeah.
how water plays in your life, because you use it a lot. You have a lot of women surfing on water and water flowing through Buddhist temples and all sorts of things. So if you could talk about how water inspired you to do this work that you're submitted for the show.
Well, actually, the first piece of this show, I'll maybe it's on my website. It's the one where the polar bear is swimming towards the viewer, and there's a
Oh
girl
yeah, let's
standing
see.
underwater with kelp.
Second.
Yeah, see if you can find that. If not, I can find it. But that was 3 years ago. I painted that, and I was really feeling sad for the state of the planet and how our generation is ruining it, and that it's the new generation's responsibility and their love that will heal the planet.
Was it on
And
this one? This guy. Is that the one you mean?
I don't see it.
Oh, because I haven't shared the. How am I doing?
Anyway,
Okay.
so when Sorka invited me to this show, it was a perfect, like, oh goody, I've got all these ideas in my head. Yeah, that's it, of how I want to continue this series. And it didn't have a title yet, but basically my heart in it was what I just described, and that I just feel sad for the state of our planet's oceans and rivers. And I mean, went on retreat to Bali about 4 years ago, And it was interesting because here we were in this idyllic retreat, and I would just look up my window, and in the bay, like literally 100 feet deep on the shore, plastic garbage, just just gutting. And so here we like to travel to third world countries and, you know, be pampered and whatever, but the locals don't have money or time or energy or bandwidth to even worry about garbage and plastic in the oceans. They're just trying to get food on the table for their families. So we in the West have very different priorities. I'm glad we have the bandwidth to do that, but not all do. So it was great to have this opportunity to create these pieces, just to remind people. I mean, not that people need to be reminded, but the penguins that I painted. There's actually a shark painting I still want to do, and then, you know, orca, and just all. And the funny thing, the irony is I am afraid of deep water. So I might be a kiter. But I am afraid of, yeah, I'm not a confident swimmer. So it's not that I'm just like, oh, I'm a kiter and I love the water. It's just, no, I just love the water and I just happen to kite on occasion. let me be clear. But this one's fun. Look at her. She's playing. Wouldn't we? That's like a fantasy to me. Like, I think that's cool that you know, just to have that fantasy that, you know, we're all in this together. And I know that's almost it's an overused statement in the last couple of months, but this is what this painting is about.
And you work exclusively in oil, excuse me, in acrylic, correct?
Right now I've got a big tub of oils, and because the problem is I'm normally teaching 5 days a week, and then I squeeze in a little bit of time to paint.
Yeah.
And right now it's the opposite.
Yeah.
And so now I've got time. So I might get into oils this summer.
This is a big piece, yeah?
Yeah, like I don't have the dimensions handy, but yeah. And underneath is a huge abstract painting. Like I just dragged all different kinds of blue paint and just to get paint down, and then I build on that. I didn't know how I was going to do that kelp in the background. I just knew I wanted it to fall back, and so it needed to be grayed down a little bit to, you know, go back. And yeah, and then my little penguins are all happy.
They're beautiful.
And in this world, they're kind of chubby, and they're getting enough fish, and you know, everyone's happy.
Yeah. Well, my dear, it is a pleasure to talk with you, and we so enjoy having your work in our gallery. And I encourage everyone who's watching this to please come down and take a look or visit us online. And we will have more artists interviews, and we hope you will enjoy them, because it is our intention to bring as much interesting, inspirational content onto our website as possible to keep you all connected to each other and to the world of art as we carry on through these crazy times. And Michelle, thank you for the work that you do. We feel very fortunate to have you in our community.
Well, thank you for having me, Leith. And I just want to say thank you to you and your team for pulling off an art show opening. It was just over a week ago for the viewers, and everyone wore masks. We managed a number of people in the room. You guys thought it through so carefully. We curated the room, so there's lots of space between all the attendees, and we just felt very cared for. And I'm just speaking on behalf of our groups. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It was great to see you. Take care.
Thank you.